Hello, Sula here from MistyHilltops.com. Thanks for stopping by. In this video, I want to show you how I create super easy flowers just using dyes and watercolor. So all I'm doing is I have die cut a bunch of flower from just plain white cardstock. And then what I do is I start coloring them with watercolor. So I start in the center, but it doesn't really matter what the effect that I want to get is to get the center darker than the outside. So for me, I find it easier to start when the paint on the watercolor on the brush, when it still has a strong shade, and then once I have brushed a little, then it gets paler, and so that's the effect that I'm trying to get to use there. So I'm starting usually with the center, and then I go outward from there. But there's different ways of how you can do it. So here I've just started, like I said, I've just make sure there's a lot of color, more color, less water on my brush, and then I just dab the center a bit. So just an uneven circle. I don't want it to be even. I don't want it to be a nice circle. I just dab the brush a little bit in the center, and then using a lot of water. I use the same shade, but obviously you could use different shades and all that, but I happen to use the same shade. I'm using a lot of water, then with the same shade I go over the entire flower so that it gets the same shade, just a little paler or more faded, I guess. And then I have this ball stylus, and all I do is I just shape the flower into, just give it a shape. Now there's different ways of how you can shape flowers, and there's a lot of tutorials that show you how you can do that. This one is, I find, a very easy one. I just shape the outside there, flipping it upside down actually, so that the color is at the bottom, and then I turn it around, and then I push the center in so that the center goes is like a valley there, so or forms a valley. So that's what I'm simply doing with these flowers and with a lot of the flowers that I'm working. Sometimes I fold, but I do like to use that ball stylus there. Here I'm just using a mouse pad. Actually, it's a soft one that I just happen to have, and it works perfectly. Here's another set of flowers that I'm using, and this one will be kind of like a purplish pink. And so again, I'm starting with using a lot of like a strong color for the center, because I want the center to be much darker. And so I do that with all the flowers that I have there, and then kind of basically using the same shade but a lot more water. I then go over the entire flower, and I'm really kind of liking it when the color gets paler there. However, that one flower got darker, and I also love how it turned out on my page. I was not at all sad when I saw the final result. But then often I still go over the center piece a lot one more time, just so to make sure it really stands out and gives a little contrast. But it's also fine if the color bleeds into the rest of the flower, if it's not just a sharp contrast between the colors. So if the colors bleed a little, that's fine for me, because I think that's just how flowers often look. And then here I do the same thing with these little flowers. Again, I start with white cardstock. I haven't shaped it yet because I just it makes it easier. I just start watercoloring the dark, and this for this I think I might have used two different shades of yellow, not the same shade, and then use a darker shade for the center, and then a very light one to color around. But I don't even mind if the entire flower gets a little darker too. So like if the yellow just really, like if it bleeds into each other, like I said earlier. And again, that like with that pinkish flower that is darker, when I was like, oh, I don't really like it, but when it was on the page, I actually thought it was great. It looked great on the page. And so I'm very happy that the flowers are not exactly the same, because even in nature, no flower is exactly the same as the other. and so it was just fine by me that they turned out differently in the shades and all that. So again, once these flowers have dried, and my color dries fairly quickly, once the flowers have dried somewhat, I start shaping them. But even if if the flowers are still a little wet, I think that makes it almost easier because the cardstock that I'm using is very thick cardstock. So obviously if you use thinner paper, I would make sure that it really is dried well. Here I'm making sure, because the watercolor just gets onto the mouse pad that I'm using there, so I'm making sure I don't use that stylus and that flower in the same spot where I use that pink, or I would have cleaned my pad. I'll clean my pad afterward so that the color doesn't stay on the pad, because obviously I'm working with different colors, different projects on this pad, and so I don't want color to get onto decolorize or recolor things there, so I will pay attention to that. These little flowers, all I just do is I push them a little down, so they're too small to do anything else. My ball stylus isn't all that big, so here with these tiny ones, I just press it down in the middle, and that's the way I do my flowers. And here I'm going to show you a couple of photos and close-ups or photos of finished pages where I've used the flowers and how they turn out on the page. So these are the yellow ones, and these are the yellow and the kind of pinkish ones. And so here is the page where I used the yellow. I added some just paper stamen that I used with one of my dies. Here's another one. Anyway, this is my video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it helpful. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.